Good morning, folks. Today in this video we're going to show you how you can use an app script to update form elements automatically as you add to them using the other feature of multiple choice and list items. That way you can start off with a very simple form and automatically add the information you need as you add more names, in this case, or donation purposes. They will automatically populate, saving you some time later down the road. So let's get started. So now that I've collected some data, I want to pull a list of all the unique values in column C and column D. So I'm going to go equal, use an array literal, and it's going to be, first one is going to be called members. We have to finish out with that quote, a semicolon. Then we're going to do a sort and a unique, and then we're going to do column C, and this is going to be the members, and we'll get rid of that trailing 6. We'll finish out that and our curly quote. What did we do? Wrong. Didn't have the and we misspelled members. Let's fix this up real quick. Okay. Now, I could drag this formula across, make sure I'm in that field there, change this name to donation type, and then this is going to be D2D, and that's actually correct. Hit enter, and so now I see I have a list of members and a list of donation types. Now we're in our app script, we're going to use this list, this column and this column, to type that information back to this item in our form. In our next step, I like to always just rename this to data. Makes it easier to work with. And I'm going to need to get a new sheet in here. I'm going to call it setup. And I'm going to use this setup sheet to write back some data that I'm going to have an app script pull in for me. Let's get started with that first app script. I want to pull some data. So we haven't started this yet, but this is going to be a new app script. I'll rename it right away, called update form, and we'll rename that. And I think I'll start by getting rid of what's in here. And then I want to grab some data and just paste it in here just to make this quicker. So I've copied some data I've already written, and I will go through this. So what we're doing with this to get the form items, let the spreadsheet, let SS equal this, getting the active spreadsheet, let the sheet equals SS get sheet by name, let the form URL is the spreadsheet get its form URL, let the form equal form app open by URL, the form URL. Let the form ID equal form get ID, and let the form ID cell equal to the sheet and get that range B1. So we're setting up some of these constants. Then we're getting the list of items, which is items is the form get all the items that are in the form. And then what we need to do is get the name and the title and the ID of each element on the form. So that's we're going to create an empty array, and then for this items list, these items, for each one of those, we're going to create an array, and it's actually an array of arrays. That's why we've put the extra brackets around that. We're going to create that, and then we're going to let the new array equal to split array. We're going to split array, which is this function I had to put in down here because I needed to split that array into two arrays, because this original array comes in as a single array, and for it to be able to written we need to split it. So we're going to let that new array equals basically run this function, and then let the form items range equal to, well, in this case it's going to be the sheet, which we've identified as the setup sheet, and we're going to get the range row 3, column 1, and we're going to write that data in there. And then we're going to take the form ID cell, which we'd identified as B1, and we're going to write the form ID in there, and that should do it. Let me save this, and let's go ahead and run it. And of course I'm running this for the first time, so I'm going to have to authorize. And for some reason, there we go, review permissions, and I'm going to allow those permissions, and that should run. And let's see what happens. Yep, it's completed. So what happened? Well, we have the form ID. We would go ahead and write this in here. This is the form ID, which we're going to need to use, and this is the item titles, and this is the item names. So now on our item IDs, excuse me. So we might, do a little bit of formatting with this. We could actually grab this paint roller and highlight that across. So now I have this item and this item, and I can use those now in my next script. In my next script that we will write to update the items in the form. So in our next step, we need to take and add a new function, and I think I'll hide this function. We got these two functions. We're going to sort of hide them. I'm going to get my cursor in here and move it down a little bit, give me some space, and I'm going to paste another function that I already have in here just to save some time. So I have my update form function. Now what we're going to do is, I've copied this from a different sheet, so what I have to look at here is make sure that this is correct. So first of all, the form ID. Well, we've collected the form ID and it's right here, so I can go ahead and copy that, and I'll replace the form ID. And we could show a little later how we could actually get this form ID the same way we did in our function get form IDs, and we could use that instead of doing this method. But I'm going to put in this form ID, and then let's double check our range. It looks to me like our range is on the data sheet, but it's going to be column H and column I. I think here we had different ranges, so this is going to be H2 colon H and I2 colon slightly different form. So we're just making sure that we know what that range is. And then what else might we need to change on here? Well, the form IDs. So let's take a look at our data we collected on our setup file. So the name is this ID, so I'll go ahead and grab that name, and let me go ahead and paste that in there. And then our donation purpose is this ID, and we can grab that and paste that into here in modifying this. And I believe that would be all we need to do, although I'm a little concerned about whether or not we're going to get this to write to the correct sheet that is going to collect this data. But let's save this. And if we were to run this update form function right now, we would expect the form to update with the names that we've collected, my names and my donation purposes. Let's see if we've got that to work. We're going to run. We've got a problem with that function. I think the problem we have here is that we've designed the sheet, but we haven't defined the actual sheet itself. So ss.get sheet by name, and we need to define that name, and that's data is what we had called it, dot get range. So I think we had to define the name of the sheet before we got the values. Let's see if that solves our problem for us. Nope, so we need to go back to the drawing board. And I can see here that we forgot to put in .get values. And so we didn't have any values. Let's try that. Oh, hey, we were successful. So let's go back to our form and see. Sure enough, if you remember, we only had one name in there. Now we've updated that list with this form script. So just taking a look at it real quick, we got our spreadsheet, we grabbed our form ID, and we've gone ahead and found the actual data, getting the values that is in H, the values on the data sheet, H and I. We're grabbing that data, and then we are opening up the form, getting the form items. We're creating 2 empty arrays, and then for this members list, this is a list for each one of those, we're going to clean that list and create a clean members list with the information we get in there, and that's to clean up any spaces or trim some spaces that might be in there. We're doing the same thing with the donation. Then we're taking the form items, and if the form items is equal to that ID, we're going to set that as a multiple choice list item. And we're going to set those choice values, and we're doing that with both of those. So the next step then is to set this on a trigger, and we're going to add a trigger, and this is going to be on form submit. We're going to update the form. We'll go ahead and save that. So we can test this now and see that if we submit a new form and add something in this other category, will it update the form with a new name? So let's test that out. I should now have all of those names in there. So let's go ahead and choose a date. Let's add a new name, Tom Brady. And this is a new retreat, or a new, let's say this is something, donation for, let's just call this a deep dive, and the donation amount here is $45, and this was made with a check, and we submit. So what we want to check and see is if we have a new name. Sure enough, there's Tom Brady. There is a deep dive. It's automatically updated my form, and if I come in here to submit another response, I can see Tom Brady and deep dive. So I'm updating my form on the fly with this app script. Let's come back and take a look at this. There's one other modification I would maybe make in here, and that would be that I wouldn't necessarily have to type this form ID. I could get this form ID the same way I got this form ID right here with this set of values here. We can get the form ID without having to get it and write it back to the sheet and then work with it that way. So I hope this is helpful. This is something I found I use quite a bit to update my my forms automatically by setting a value list. One last thing I would point out, if I were to change this from a let's say donation list right now is a multiple choice, if I wanted this to be a drop down, and then when I come here and refresh my list, notice my drop down is going to be this. Now if we make that kind of a change on my form, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. We have to make a change here because we notice this is a form items as a multiple choice item, and what we would have to do here is we'd have to change this. There's another choice in here, and if I go as a list item and then go ahead and do that and go ahead and save that. Now if I had a new list in here, let me say I have a new list that I've added. the problem with a list item is I can't get that other function. But let's say you knew what your donation types were and you wanted it to be as a list. If I added another type of a donation, maybe call it an evening gathering. Okay, if I put that in there, and then we'll notice on my sheet we don't have that listed yet. But if we did, we would go ahead and fill this out. We'll just use another person. We'll use what's going on with that. John Smith is this time doing an evening gathering. Donation amount $50, and it's cash donation, and we submit. Now let's take a look at our list here. We can see that we have a new type, evening gathering, and notice when I had added that, we had added it to the bottom, but because that list got rewritten, evening gathering has now been alphabetized because we're sorting unique. So either way you want to do that. The issue with, as you can see, with this kind of a list is I don't have an other in here, and so that's why I tend to use the multiple choice. And we can just switch this back. We'll go ahead and copy that and do that. But I just wanted to point out that you can write these list items also using this feature. Hope that helps and hope you enjoy.